Hello and welcome to my shop. Today I'm going to work on a box joint jig. Now I have this box joint jig that I have made up and it works just fine except I have to clamp it onto my miter sled, and I wanted something a little more refined and something where I could change out the size of the jig, because I might not always want to cut to the same size. Um, so anyway, let's get on with that and we'll see how I do. At its most basic, a box joint jig is just a couple of notches with a spline or a key, and one of them for spacing. The best way to do this is to cut the slot with your dado or your router bit first, and then cut the spline to match that dimension. If you cut the spline first, then try and match it with the dado, that's just going to make things really difficult. To make this simple, I have two 1/8 inch chippers in there and a 1/16 inch chipper. So it's going to be a nice, reasonable size cut, about the same size as this that I've got right here. That'll work well. We're going to make the pass just over 3/4 of an inch high because that's what the thickness of most of the material you're going to be using. And the other thing I want to measure is the distance from this first cut to the edge of my table saw, which is 10 inches. I don't want my sled to be any wider than that because I don't want it hanging off the edge of the table. So let's go and make this first cut. Okay, there's our reference cut. That's how wide we're going to make the key to go through that. Now, since I have to cut that strip, I'm going to take the dado out. This is kind of a pain in the butt process, but it's also kind of how you have to do it. All right, so I measured this to be about 10 inches. So I don't want this part of it to be any wider than 10 inches. So let's just go with that. Let's go with 10 inches. You know, let's go 9.5 just to leave a little extra. There we go. That precise dimension doesn't really matter. All right, so now we want to figure out how we're exactly going to place these. So I want this to be able to start back here a little bit. I am going to end up cutting these short at some point. Basically, it's going to look like that. And there'll be a notch in here. So we want to try and make that around the center point. See if we can figure out the center point here. All right, 24 inches, just under. This is our center point, is 12. Remembering that the dado blade is a little bit thicker. So why don't we do the center point? We'll line the center point up with this edge of the blade. That's what we'll do. Give or take. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. And then we'll end up cutting a notch, something like that right there. First things first, we're going to get these lined up. I think for that, we're going to use our old friend double stick tape. We're going to do this one side at a time. This will set my width, just having these in the rails, but we're going to make sure we're not cocked one way or the other like that. So we're going to put some double stick tape on here. Well, that's not what I wanted to happen. Time for a new blade, I think. This one seems to be giving me problems. Here we go. Come on. Come on. There we go. Should be doing this where y'all can see. So we'll peel that off. And slide this up through the channel. We want the front end aligned with the front edge of the board. The halfway mark to be right around there. A little bit more. Yeah, right about there. Line that up and see if I can't catch that double stick tape. Oops, got it just enough. Got it just enough. All right, so we're going to put one screw here, and that will allow this to still pivot so we can adjust. So let us do that. I think that's upside down. That's fine. It's all good. It's fine. Yeah, because the countersinks are on this side. And I think the screws that came with this are probably going to be a bit longer than we need. Almost certainly. So let's get some midgy screws. Like that. We want to pilot hold this just a little bit. There. Now we want really short screws that are going to go through that, but not all the way through the plywood. That's perfect. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Right. All this side. So now, see, that can still swing. So we can do adjustments that way. Because what we want to do is when we line this up with this, we want to make sure this is perfectly square. So let us get our squares. We're going to line that up with that. Right. And that up with that. Line that up with that. Now what we need is to do double-sided tape on this. That's the downside. You know, honestly, I think these were 3D printed. That kind of really doesn't make any sense, but they sure feel like they have print lines on them. I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of difference to anything, but just a curiosity. All right, now we'll slide this up, align it with that, right there. Give that a press, and hopefully it's, no, it's not quite high enough to catch. You know, I'm thinking the right-left distance is the most important piece. Each of the rails can be squared up. No, don't fall off. Shoot. All right. We need to put some shims in here. Grab some washers. I have some kicking around in here. Yep. See if these will shim it high enough to make contact. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. All right, you settle down in your rail. You come right to there. Line that up. Now we want to make sure that this is square. It's not. It needs to be that way. All right. There we go. All right. We should be able to, that's still loose. This one's in. So let's do this one first. Just gonna leave that in place. Do our pilot holes right through the sticky tape. Our little midgy screws here. Whoop. That one is not long enough. Okay. Now, if I have done this correctly, ha! Square. Perfectly square. So all I have to do is bring this one to square. Like that. A little bit of a pilot hole. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Square. That's what we wanted. Okay. Look at that, huh? A little bit of a slop in there, but maybe we can take that out, expanding it a little bit. Anyway, that part is done. All right, now we need to cut a notch in here. And I think my only option is either handsaw or jigsaw. I think we're going to go with a jigsaw. Because it's not going to be any wider than this gap here. So actually, let's just go off of that. So go just a little wider than that gap. Yeah. I mean, I suppose I could just load the full dado stack in there. But I don't think I want to do that. Like, there's a dozen different ways I can do this. It's just however I feel like. And I'm thinking for a minute, okay? Could handsaw and chisel. Just mark this with a marking knife and chisel it out. I mean, it doesn't have to be precise. This feels like the way I want to do it right now. Get out the Ryoba. Now we just have to chisel out the waste. That should be no problem, right? 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 Oh, the winch chisel's going to be too wide. Oh, that one's beat to shit. So at least still got an edge on it. Here we go. All chiseled out. Okay, that's looking good. Now, we need to make the primary fence. It's just going to go right on like this, but we need to split it so it falls on either side of that gap. So we need to cut it there, roughly, and there, roughly. Back to the bench. Really, really need to clear this bench off. Okay. So I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to glue these fences onto the base. And while that glue is curing, I am going to clean my bench, and I will come back to you. Okay, so here we are. The basic part of the sled is done. We've got the gap that meets like about halfway through there, or at least it makes it so you get to the arbor. So we want the high point to be able to clear this. This is unplugged right now. So that part's all set. Now we need to make the actual box joint cutting piece, which is just going to be like this. So this is about just over 3/4 of an inch high. So what we're going to do is we're going to clamp this onto here. And we want the final piece to be like this. So try to think this through really quick. Doesn't really matter which direction you do it. This is how I've been doing it. Right, so I want to move this like this, make my first piece. And then I'm going to move this over the thickness of the insert and make a second cut. So let's do that. Let's get our safety equipment on. We've got prescription safety lenses, which is good. Of course, the breathing protection and the ear protection. It would help if we plugged the saw in, wouldn't it? Let's do that. Got some crazy tear out on the back here. I should have put some tape across there. But, oh well. That's just visual. That's not really going to impact anything. So now, we want to put the insert in here. Right like that. That's a nice snug point. So I'm going to cut this down to length really quick. All right, so now what we want to do is we want that hole to be this thickness over. So we're going to use this as a marker. That. Now we're going to cut our second slot. Right now, now we just need to glue our insert into here. Doesn't really matter which side we do it on, I don't think. You probably can't even see what I'm doing over here. That is going to go right in there. And then I'm going to trim the ends off. So let's do that. Why don't I bring you over here to my semi-clean workbench. It was more clean earlier. We are just going to use a little scooper glue here. can find my super glue, that is. Ah, it's down there. Add a little bit of accelerator. That's going to be the front. That as snug as possible. So let's mark where we want that. On a little super glue. That feels pretty snug no matter what. A little accelerant. Stir that super glue up really quick. Now, what we're going to have to do, yeah, that's good. Sure it's wicked in there nicely. Now I want to trim this back part off so it's flush. I could use this, but I'm going to get one of my flush trims out for this. There we go. Nice and flush trimmed. And this front piece can be a little bit shorter. It doesn't need to be that long. Now I want something I can straight with. It really doesn't need to be that long. Okay. Let's come back over here now. All right. Unplug the saw for a moment. All right, so this is going to be lined up with the teeth like that. So now what I want to do is attach this to here. And I would like to do it in a way where it's removable. I believe I have just the thing, if I can remember where I put it. All right, I think I have what I need in here. I think, if I remember right. If I remember right. If not, I can go with something else. Come back over here to the bench with me. I want to dump all this out onto my saw. Yes, there we go. We have these countersinks. Should have at least 2 of them. Yep. And then these knobs. Those knobs are too big. These little brass knobs. I believe. Yep. The idea is I'm going to drill through, put these countersinks, and just crank them on with that. So let's see how that works. All right, back over here we are. Again, the placement of these does not have to be a precision thing. Okay, drill bit, and countersink bit. Now we want a drill bit that's going to be right width for these to just easily pass through, but not be too loose. I think it's going to be that one right there. We get a piece of scrap and drill a test hole. Yeah, this is now scrap. That is just a little too snug, I think. That might be just a little too snug. Step up a size. I don't want them too loose either. Be tough sometimes finding exactly the right bit size, what you're trying to accomplish. Ah, yeah, that's much better. And it's not too loose. I was worried that one was going to be too loose. All right, so we're going to leave these clamps on here. And I want to drill through from the other side. So I want to make sure that this side is going to be the cleaner side. Got a little tear out on the back, but I could avoid the tear out on the back, but it's not a big deal for this. All right. So now we want to countersink both of these. This step might be unnecessary because the board is unlikely to extend that far in either direction, but you know what? It's my preference to have these countersunk and flush. All right, a little bit more with that. Almost there. Just a tiny bit more. This bit is very slow going. Just a tiny, tiny bit more. That'll probably do it. Yeah, that feels flush. Oh, nice. Nice and snug. All right, let's countersink the other side. Starts to really burnish the wood pretty quickly. Just a little bit more. That'll do. Yeah. And when I put the nut on, I think it pulls it in nice and tight. So now this way, yeah. So now this way, if I ever want to change the size of what I'm working on here, I can just take this off, do up another one a different size and put it on, or when this eventually wears out, because it will, I can just make a new one and put it on. All right, let's vacuum up some of this sawdust and try and make us some box joints. Oh, I suppose I could just use that since I have it, but I think I actually want to do it with this. So I know, I'm off camera. I'm probably just going to cut these parts anyway. I'm already planning on doing a lot of editing in this. So, you know, why the hell not? Got a bunch of clamps where my saws are hanging, and it's really getting kind of annoying. Here, go over here for a second. You still recording? We are. If I cut this nice and straight and square. Hey, that's not square. That's square, though. That is definitely not square. That is also not square. You know what? Let me try squaring these up a little bit with my hand plane. See if I can actually accomplish that. And it is just pine. It should plane fairly quickly and easily. No, y'all can't see a single thing that's going on right now, but it's the way it works. Sometimes we do TV, sometimes we do radio. I should release a hand plating ASMR video. You know that? There. Closer. Yeah, I think that's close enough. Let's see, that side's pretty darn square already. Let's just clean it up a little bit. Good enough. Good enough. Okay. Clamps. This is much quicker to do if you just hold the boards by hand, like I've seen some people do, but you know what? I don't want to. I don't want my hands that close to a spinning dado blade. I did get a little bit of tear out on this one. Less on this one. It could be because this is just soft pine, but now comes the acid test. See if this works or not. Did these fit? Will these fit together? And how well will they fit together? That is a snug ass fit. It's a little snugger than it should be. That's a lot snugger than it should be. So the design works. I mean, we got really good alignment there. Got something off with my measuring though that I'm going to need to adjust. But the basic table works. Okay, so I have run into a bit of a snag with my box jig. The joints are too tight. This isn't even glued. And it really just does not want to move. You can see it's so tight, it actually even split right here while I was trying to put them together. So basically, the fingers are exactly the same size as the gaps, with no room for them to move past each other, which isn't great. It makes a non-functioning joint. So what to do? Well, I could very easily just remake the jig face here. But I was seeing about what else I might be able to do. Now, if you look at it, this is the gap. And this dimension right here represents the thickness of the finger, which means that the key or spline or whatever is just a little bit too far that way by like thousandths of an inch, like the thickness or piece of tape or two, the painter's tape. So what I think I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to thin this down because you'll see in the videos, I actually had to shove it onto this, so the spline's a little too thick anyway. But I'm going to put a piece of tape on here, thin this side a little bit, and see if that corrects the jig. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Works. Question now is, will these fit together? The answer to that question is still a resounding no. Something is still misaligned here. But what? The finger thickness is still wrong. So I'm going to add a little bit more shim. I think. Really, maybe not. Like that fits perfectly. One, two, three. You get three to fit together without any trouble. But when we get to 4, things are getting more and more difficult. Yeah, and it's when we get to 5 that it really stops. So what is going on then? I like this kind of problem solving because I like solving problems, but also helps me figure out what's going on with the whole thing. I'm not doing much talking. Oh, that side doesn't want to seem to fit at all. My cut's not evenly spaced. Maybe I should just remake the jig. You know what? Got into the piece of plywood. Let me do that. All right, and here we are. Success. I've made a box. Everything is nice and square. The edges are flush. I finally kind of figured out what I was doing wrong when I was actually doing some of the cutting wrong. But I got that squared away. I checked another video, and now I know what I'm doing. And it works. I'm very happy with this. I added some handles on here. They're not super necessary, but keeps my hands away from the blade. I added some fillets in here to give it a little bit of strength this way, because the only thing that's holding this and this together is the glue seam. It doesn't come under a lot of strain, but I figured why not? I'll put a couple quarter pieces in there, and here we are. It works. So hopefully you enjoyed what is sure to be a bit of a chaotic video, and I'll see you in the next one.